Good morning, guys, girls, ladies, people, individuals, everybody in between, wherever you fit. I hope you're having a great Monday. It's been a long time since I've been excited for Mondays, and today is a definitely exciting day for me, man. Here we are, step one. Wow, I can't believe I'm doing it. This is the fourth time I've hit the record button, and it's not coming out well. So I'm hoping, bear with me, we get to this one. I woke up this morning to just wetness and snow being washed away, and the front lawn is just starting to show some signs of little greenness. Mostly all brown and gross, but hey, man, I'll take the little bit of greenness. It tells me that winter's behind us, spring is on the way, and I'm excited for it, man. And I'm excited to do this. As I said, this is like the fourth time I've hit the record button, and I've just had to squash everything else. But I'm hoping this is going to be the one. Step one. It's a fascinating idea, and I've got an unpopular opinion. I know for a fact my opinion on this step is unpopular. That said, let's get to it, man. What are we waiting for, right? Step one tells us we admitted we are powerless over alcohol, that our lives have become unmanageable. Two separate ideas. I gravitate toward the commas. I gravitate to this periods and the semicolons and the natural pauses, those places where an author or an editor tells us that we're supposed to pause and take a moment and wait till the next thought or what have you. That's just me. I have a love affair with the written word. That's, I don't know, unique, but it definitely impacts me when I read. And so for me, step one has always been a two-part step, two separate ideas. And to that end, I think it's important to start this conversation anyways, with a couple of the talking points I made. Acceptance of the devastating weakness, powerlessness to alcohol. That's it in a nutshell. We have to get to that place. We have to be fully prepared to accept our absolute weakness. And without getting into too much other stuff, there's that spot that those of us who have come along, we're out here in the deep water 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 years, what have you, 30, 40 years. To those guys, man, if you're watching and you know who you are because I've liked your tweets, man, like, thank you so much for sharing. Thank you. It's so important to me to see people further on still grinding and getting it done. What an inspiration. I digress. For us that are in this deep water, we've been to that place where we were so broken and so beaten and so completely devastated by the lives that we had been living. We were ready, willing, and able to do whatever it took. There's no question. That acceptance for us becomes teachability because we are willing to admit we don't know a thing. Whatever we thought we knew got us to that place. Doors of Alcoholics Anonymous, dusty church basement, a whole bunch of strangers, and all we were looking for is help because we couldn't do it. That's what we knew, and it got us to that point. What we were unprepared for was the teachability that was coming. And once we figured it out, teach us more. We just want more. Bill writes about the explosive experience in the introduction and the forward, as I talked about yesterday. And for me, that's such a powerful, powerful idea because I'm not a doctor. I'm not a lawyer. I'm nothing. I'm just some random dude, third generation drunk, second that made it to recovery, thank God, by the grace of God. What do I know? Well, what I know is 25 years of lived experience that teaches me this is how it works. This is, and these books, this literature is exactly how it works. I spoke about it yesterday. When you have Bibles and sacred scriptures that have been butchered by humans for thousands of years in myriad different interpretations, our small society said, leave Bill's words alone. They work just fine. That's because we have experience. That's what Bill writes about in these pages, is their explosive experience, the experience that they took with them into writing these words down. And for them, that meant absolute submission to the idea that you're powerless. Whatever you had been doing left you powerless to that moment. That eventually changed for them. Certainly, in those earliest cases, it was easy to see that a drunk showing up at the doors of Alcoholics Anonymous, begging for help, their lives had become completely unmanageable. They couldn't pay their bills. They wouldn't pay their bills in lieu of a box of beer or a bottle of booze. Families were falling apart. People were homeless. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. That's not a life that's manageable. That's a life that's completely out of control. But after the publication of their first book in 1939, Bill writes that the membership in the society took on a much different appearance. People who had barely scratched the surface of their addiction, younger people, started to show up to the doors and started to get the program. So they had to raise the bottom. They had to raise that level of devastation. Certainly somebody in their 40s and 50s who's spent most of their adult life in the dregs of alcoholism, as compared to somebody who's in their 20s, like myself. I got sober when I was 28 years old. There's a marked difference between those two people, so certainly the bottom had to be raised. And they had to recognize that regardless, we must hit bottom. All alcoholics must hit bottom. And we must get to that place where we accept we're completely powerless. Our lives are completely unmanageable. And we must arrive at that place where we're desperately teachable to learn. And I think that in and of itself is the spirit of step one. I hope that makes sense, man. I really do. I just like to talk about the idea that certainly right here in the pages, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol. Pause. That our lives had become unmanageable. That for me is pretty literal. Then we get into step one, and one of the things that I'd highlighted later on reads, we know that little good can come to any alcoholic who joins AA unless he has first accepted his devastating weakness and all its consequences. Until he so humbles himself, his sobriety, if any, will be precarious. Of real happiness he will find none at all, proved beyond doubt by an immense experience. There's that explosive experience that Bill wrote about in the foreword in the introduction. I love it. Yeah, go ahead. We know. It's just brilliant. Of real happiness he will find none at all, proved beyond doubt by an immense experience. This is one of the facts of AA life. It can't be debated. Further on into page 22, we shall find no enduring strength until we first admit complete defeat. It is exactly that. We have to be left completely humbled and teachable. And that's the only way this thing works. It was a statistical fact that alcoholics almost never recovered on their own resources. We need each other. And then here's where they talk about raising the bottom on page 23. It is a tremendous satisfaction to record that in the following years this had changed. Alcoholics who still had their health, families, jobs, and even 2 cars in their garage began to recognize their alcoholism. As the trend grew, we were joined by young people who were scarcely more than potential alcoholics. Right toward the end, though, I thought it was absolutely fantastic to read this little bit here. It was then discovered that when one alcoholic had planned in the mind of another the true nature of his malady, that person could never be the same again. Once you point it out to somebody, they're changed forever. And it's not for me to point that out, but certainly when somebody is searching, like, hey man, do I got a problem? When he's connected with another person who has found out that he has a problem or she has a problem, it changes the person. It really does. There's some brilliant stuff in these pages, and I strongly encourage you guys to get into them. I hope, beyond hope, that this one today makes some sense and it's cohesive. I don't want to beat it up too much, but for me, step one is certainly a two-part step. It's one thing to admit that you're powerless, and it's something for me, at any rate, completely different to recognize that my life had become unmanageable. And at 28 years old, I was one of the young guys walking in the doors and looking for help. And I think I was rather unique in that third generation. I was completely aware of the history that I had come from. Second generation in recovery, I had witnessed firsthand from 7 years old not only the devastation that alcohol could leave on a family, but the hope that could be replaced in recovery. And I'm eternally grateful that my father found that and passed it on for me. But at 28 years old, I certainly was spared, a lifetime of misery. And to that end, it was very unique for me to recognize how unmanageable my life had become and how much damage I had already done to my young wife and then young children. So I hope that in some way I've been able to kind of do this one justice, and we'll see what tomorrow holds, guys. So gonna hit the stop button. It works if we work it, guys. One day at a time. I love you, and I am cheering you on, man. Happy Monday, everybody.